All right, folks, why don't we get going? Thank you so much for coming out tonight. For those of you that have seen this presentation before, I will tell you there were a few new slides, so at least there was something new for you. For the rest of you, you can grade the standard part as to whether you like this one or the last one or the one before that or the one before that. What we're hoping to do tonight is to give you an overview of where we are, why we're doing this, and what it's going to cost. So we did receive bids last week, and so we know this is going to be a guessing game, and we have some numbers that you can all take with you to figure out what it means for you based on your current assessment and your taxes. But just to start out, just in case some of you don't know, I'd like to go over who's responsible for all this. So I'm John Wilhelmsen, if you don't know me. We have John Trainer who's on the committee. Let's see, where's Nancy Butler? We got Ross McPherson, Mark Wallace, and Colleen Thompson. And then my sensei in all this is Dan Pilata. He's our owner's project manager. I'm very surprised he turned up today because I spent way too much time with him on the phone yesterday trying to sort all this out. But with all that said, why don't we dive in? So our current station is 50 years old. It's done a great job, and then I think it's done another great job yet again because it's done so much more than it was ever designed for. It was designed for a call fire department, full stop. Not EMS, and certainly not for the type of equipment that we have today. And we'll go through that. But where we are today, these are not staged pictures. I didn't have the chief go and put trucks in certain places. This is what you will find if you go over to the station and you happen to see the tank or an ambulance too. That's how they park. Because if you don't park them that way, you can't get to the other side of the garage. Because there's about 1.5 feet of space in front of the doors. So a little tight. We have the space and the facilities properly clean and decontaminate are severely lacking in the building. We have total lack of access control. So if you go over to the police station, it's more like a modern building. You have to have key cards to get in or be let in. There's none of that. The doors lock, but that's about it. And that is sort of a little more of an issue from a medical supply perspective because some of the medicines that they use are uncontrolled substances, and so we have to keep those locked up. The building is for today's standards, not compliant with the safety standards that we would expect, largely because of space issues. And space issues both for the size of the equipment that's in the apparatus bays, but also space to be able to have proper decontamination of gear, storage of your fire gear. And for those of you who've been over to the pancake breakfasts, you walk right by all the gear, it's all right there. And it's also right there if you're walking from the admin area back to the day room, you're walking by it all the time. That's not how we set things up anymore. You want to keep what they call the hot zones and the cold zones separate. Ours are all together. It's all just one zone. So we're talking about space facility constraints. I swiped this from someone else's presentation because it's just such a great illustration of looking at the difference between a modern engine and an engine from the 1950s. And the chief can speak to it more, but things are not getting any smaller, they're only getting bigger. And there's different requirements. No one's allowed to ride in the back of engines anymore, so you have to have room. The first thing that happens, you have to have room on the engine, a seat for everyone inside. So that makes the engine bigger. And now I believe there's requirements for that certain of the gear shouldn't be in the cab with you as well, which then for a modern engine is going to make it even bigger. And then from an ambulance perspective, it's a pretty good illustration. So remember we had the white ambulance? Well, when ambulance A2 when A2 came on, it was 3 feet longer than the white ambulance. And then when this ambulance came on, which is current A1 to replace the white one, this was 3 feet longer than A2, or 6 feet longer than the prior ambulance. So everything keeps getting bigger and we're running out of room. The next ambulance that we buy to replace the aging A2 won't fit. It just won't fit. And as it is now, the brush breaker 184, they take that offline every winter. They drain it and put it down in the garage down on Center Street because we do not have room for the 7 vehicles that we need to run the program inside the building, only 6 and soon to be 5 when we have to upgrade the ambulance. We also have supplies and materials and everything spread across 4 different buildings, containers and trailers, across 3 different locations. We have certain things that are stored here in the townhouse because there isn't room in the fire station. We have stuff next to the fire station, the container there, and then that container that you see, the trailer that you see on the way to the transfer station, as you pull in, you have stuff in there too, I believe. So, not really a good way of storage, and I think some of the stuff that's stored in here, you might have to come over at night to be able to get it because you need to restock the ambulance after a run. But here we have some creative use of space. That's the hole we cut in the wall so the engine will fit with the ladder on it. So, just needed that much more. But it's there, and this is what it looks like. This is the library side along where the tanker is. So, making the best use of space possible, but certainly no room for error or any margin for error. And I didn't say it before, but as we go, if you have questions, please interrupt. I don't need to hear myself talk quite as much as I'm going to. So what have we accomplished so far? We did complete construction documents and bid specs. That's all done. We pre-qualified contractors and subcontractors this in January, February timeframe, and we went out to bid. The pre-qualification of general contractors, we actually had 13 come in for pre-qual, and we had 8 that submitted bids. We are really, really lucky. Compared to where we were a year or 2 years ago, to have this much interest in the project that has given us a really great opportunity here. It's still not going to be cheap, but it's not going to be as expensive. We did perk testing for a new complex septic field. So the existing septic field for the fire station, this building, the police station, and the town barn sits down just past the town barn driveway. It's a nice little pine grove. Put in back in 1999 as a repair system. It is no longer meeting the needs. The pine trees will be very upset that it's not going to be putting stuff in there anymore, but we have a new system that we have designed and will be part of this project in order to not only be able to deal with the new fire station, but to be able to support the other buildings on the complex and be able to get us really up to code as to where we need to be there. We've also, as a separate project, but it's related, we are working on a new public water supply for the complex. The current well that supplies most of the buildings up here, well, police station, fire station, this building is in the basement here. And to get full access to it, you have to put a hole in the floor to get in there in order to be able to pull the pump out if we do. So we're hoping that that pump stays running. And then we have a well at the library, and we have a well down at the town barn, 2 actually. But none of those meet the full public water supply standards. So using ARPA funds, we are working on that right now. We have 3 wells drilled out behind town barn, and we're working on getting the testing completed and the design for that, and that's a project that's going to be going on separate from this project, but it's all integrated as far as what we're doing here on the town complex. So this is the floor plan for the new station. I'm going to kind of walk through sort of the different areas so you have an idea of how this all fits together. This is the new apparatus bay. It will meet all of our program needs and space for the vehicles, and most importantly, well, 2 things, most importantly. I guess most importantly, it's safer, right? Because currently the way that we're set up, we have doors that are very narrow for the vehicles to get out of. All sorts of crush points that could happen if someone is in the wrong spot at the wrong time as vehicles are backing in. And this will remedy all of that. But also we'll be able to get all of the vehicles into the building that we need, and plenty of room for future growth of vehicles because that's what they keep seeming to do. We talked a little bit about safety and about trying to keep the gear that the fire department is using, and trying to keep that gear out and away from sort of the public areas and the admin areas. This design does that. We have areas both here and then up there that are for gear storage. We also, in order to be able to cost effectively provide space for additional storage, of things like trailers and things like that. We have a shed roof that comes off the back here, so that at least the apparatus that are stored under there will have cover and be sort of out of the way. And that was just sort of easy because the roof was coming down anyway, so we said, well, we'll just extend it a little bit and give some room there for that. And this is probably one of the more important pieces here, is this whole area is set up for really safety of our firefighters. Because this allows for them to come in from a fire, be able to take their gear off, be able to utilize it with gear washers and dryers, be able to decontaminate in the showers that are in here before they ever get back into the other space, the admin space and the personnel space that we have in the building. Today, we don't have any of that. If we have a fire, they're going home in clothes that they wore at the fire and are doing that work at home. We should be doing it in the building and trying to keep those contaminants out of their personal vehicles and out of their homes. And then we have our administration area. This top area up here is really the full admin area today. It's an office and a desk in the hallway. It's very cozy, but this will allow for a nice open area for admin up in the top right there. Then a small conference room that they can use when they need to look over larger plans for things for fire safety. And then the chief, we actually give her own office instead of sharing it with 3 to 4 of her closest friends. The lower section here is a day room with a kitchen, and then quarters for the folks that are staying overnight to make an ambulance for EMT purposes. And then the final section of the building is what I call community interaction, or the public space. Up here we have a training room that's sized for the department. So the police has a small training room, which if you ever come to one of our meetings, you can join us there quite a bit. We utilize that for meetings. This can be used for public meetings, not just for fire department training. And also, we think this would be an ideal place down the road for cooling the warming center. Partly because we have the building staffed at all times, and if we have a need for any EMTs, they're right there. And it's a nice size for that. So we have that space that will be available for us to utilize as a town, not just for the fire department. And then we've also added, in the upper right there, we have added a medical room. Similar thing like when you go to your doctor's office. So if they're running blood pressure checks or other types of things, you can do it right there. Or if someone shows up at the door and they're not feeling well, you can bring them in there, you can do an assessment, and then if need be, you go out the door into the bay and take them off in the ambulance. So it's something we're seeing in a lot of the newer stations, that they take and utilize this space in order to be able to help the community and provide sort of more options and resources. And this, we're getting back to that hot and cold zone separation. Just to kind of put it all together, you see the area in red is sort of where we have the gear and the apparatus and the storage of gear, and then the blue side is sort of public and administration and personnel space. Any questions? So where's the fire station going? This is a conceptual plan that just helps to sort of show the whole campus, which I'll show this, and I'll show you one next that shows you exactly where it goes. But basically it's going right here behind the police station. And it kind of has its own separate area here so that the fire department can utilize deal with the apparatus outside, and also plenty of area to deal with. If you have a big fire, a big training, that there'll be plenty of parking spaces for them to deal with, some of which are going to be on grass, but they have a coating down so that you can grow grass there, but you can't park as well. And then here to orient as well here, existing police station in blue, townhouse in yellow, the fields in green, and the new fire station, surprisingly in red. I don't know why I chose that color. Some additional project scope. We have the driveway out here that we were able to put in on a shoestring budget at the end of the project. So we actually have a driveway because the original project we weren't able to include it in the budget because we didn't think we could afford it. We got the driveway in, however, it's a little less than perfect because the hill is kind of big and in the way. So here we would actually remove part of the hill, and clear, a nice clear view so you can be able to see down I guess, to the north on 58, and then a straightening of the driveway as well to make it easier for the larger apparatus to get in and out. This is the septic that we were talking about. It's a new septic field. I did talk to the engineer today. He said this is probably about a $100,000 item in the budget. So this is one of those things that if we're able to get the project through, then this will be part of the project. If not, this is going to be an item at some point in the future that we're going to have to follow through with because we will need it sooner rather than later. The other thing with this plan is that they're going to clear out plenty around this time to make sure that we mow it and don't grow pine forests, because the septics just don't like that so much. We did the perk test already in January, and the consultant is working on getting the approvals for the project. So what do we do with the old fire station? Well, one of the ideas is that we could repurpose the facility as a community center and or a senior center, or both. It is a good space overall, and we do have a nice time in there when we eat our pancakes in December. And it's space that could be used relatively soon after occupancy of the new building. That, of course, will be its own project and plan, but we think that that's something that could be done in multiple stages with some, occupying it largely as is, maybe with some new paint, and then move on to do some minor renovations, like, I don't know, taking out the big garage doors and putting windows in instead, and then you can have a really nice building that sits really in the side of the campus, the complex that is really community oriented. With the library and the ball fields and the townhouse all in that one area, it'd be a nice place to be able to bring the community together. Another question that we get quite a bit is, why are we not renovating? So believe it or not, we have been talking about fire station, some of you know, for over 10 years. We did a comprehensive study that was finished back in 2014 and came to the conclusion that it was not really a fiscally positive way to move with that. And we've looked at that as well. We've talked with architects, not just the ones we've hired, but others, and gotten input. And one of the major concerns with it is that if you start taking apart an old building that's 50 years old, and the amount that we'll have to take it apart, it's going to cost a lot. Because you're going to have to bring it up to code with all the modern codes. And by the time you're doing all of that and address anything else that shows up that you don't expect, you're probably going to have an increased cost per square foot. But even more important than that is that you can't renovate that building with the fire department in it. One, the building isn't big enough to run today. It's certainly not big enough to be able to take part of it and renovate it and then do another. So you're talking about a temporary station, and a temporary station can cost as much as $2 to $3 million during the time of renovation. If you have overruns, then it's going to cost you more there. And that's just to rent the station. You don't get any of that money back, so you're at $2 to $3 million before we even started renovating anything. And we also would have to have a place to put it. And we really don't have a place where we could put a building, a temporary building that large. Usually when we see a community go ahead and do this type of thing where they're renovating a building, it's because it's usually of historic nature, and there's some more feasible way that they can do that, but they are spending more money than they know it, and that's how they decided that they wanted to go. The other issue we would have is that the ball fields would need to be moved and relocated because there isn't room over there to put a bigger building in that space. And if we're doing that, now we also have 2 new ball fields built, and that's going to add probably millions to the cost as well. So from a cost efficiency standpoint, renovation is not an option to continue to use this as a fire facility for the next 50 years. So we've talked, for those of you who've been here before, we've talked about cost escalation. So I thought we would pull some charts in just to kind of talk about that. This is a chart that just looks at non-residential building. And if you look here, there's about 10 years. They're listed down here in numbers. I think the important thing to take from, the two important things to take from this, one is the slope of that chart. That's not helpful. And the second is, if you look at the numbers in the top row there, out of the 9 of the last 10 years, the cost escalation was above, or very much above, 2.5%. And 2.5%, of course, is our magic number, because that is what we're allowed to appropriate in addition every year under Prop 2.5. And so when you have an increased cost of 3.8% year over year, you have to come up with that extra 1.3% from somewhere. It's not going to be from raise and appropriate through what you have under your levy. So and then the other thing I would just note on this chart, it's a good, helpful chart with the numbers, but this is all non-residential buildings, which means a lot of commercial buildings, and not public buildings. In Massachusetts, public buildings, we have prevailing wage. And so that can add additional costs and cost escalation onto it. So, a lot going on here. What I would call your attention to is, again, the chart looks pretty much very similar to the other one. It's one of Dan's favorite charts in the world, but it goes up very steeply as we get into the 2018, 2019 timeframe. It starts climbing. COVID didn't help any of this, but it's not just COVID. And so, for instance, 2019, Billborough put in a new high school, $438 a square foot. Just for comparison, Wakefield priced out at $850, and that was choosing some of the little squares in the lower section here. There's some of these up here that are $1,000, $1,100 a square foot. Now, that may be also some of what the choices they made, but it's also just a reflection of how much the cost has gone up in this time. So the one thing that I can promise you is that if we don't do it this year, next year it's going to cost more. It's the only thing I can promise you. It will cost more, and it will cost more than 2.5% more. Our cost estimates that we did year over year as we're going through this project were about 7 to 8% annual increase. And that's a lot. All right, this is what everyone was here for. These are the costs based on the bid that we got. And I'm going to talk in the next slide about our budget, what that bid was, and how that all came in. But to get this down to nuts and bolts, we're talking about 88 cents per $1,000 valuation on an annual basis. And that amounts to about $468 or $117 quarterly for the average tax bill. And the average tax bill in Plympton currently for fiscal year 25 is almost $8,500. So you can use the little thing down there to get your own annual cost based on your valuation. And then let me tell you a couple of the assumptions here of how we got to this number. This assumes $14 million bonded for 30 years at 4.5%. We are not bonding this today. We are not bonding this at town meeting. We're not bonding this after the election following town meeting. We will be bonding this in the summer if everything goes along. And so if interest rates go down, then that means that this number could go down as well. If they go up, obviously, happens that it goes up. In working with our town finance team and the finance committee, one of the things that we have looked to do to help offset the overall cost that goes right to the taxpayer is to supplement from capital stabilization on an annual basis $100,000 of the annual payment that we would be making. So that would take that off the top as far as what we'd be looking for the homeowners to be able to bear on their taxes. The other thing is we have two different debt schedules that are rolling off in the next year and a half, 2 years, that will lower your tax burden on your bill, and then this would, of course, come in and replace that. So the one thing we have is we have the last of the debt rolls off next year in 2026, and that's about $50,000 that we're currently, that was a current debt exclusion. That's the last year that we're paying that. And there's also about $150,000 that Plympton is responsible for at Silver Lake. And we conservatively are estimating that we could maybe take back about $50,000 of that, because Silver Lake has their own capital needs that they'll be needing to look to bond and deal with over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So we can't assume that we can take all that back. So taking those two things in, that's how we get to these numbers off of the $14 million bonded over the 30 years. I'm going to pause for questions because there have to be some there.
You mentioned about the new building being used for the public and medical needs. How many spaces do you have?
It's just one room.
No, parking spaces, I'm sorry.
Oh, a lot. So there's spaces around the front of the building.
No, with the right-hand side, that's in the grass.
So you have, so this is where the public would come in. You have spaces here and all along here. The front door is right there. So you have a set of spaces right up front. The spaces along here that you can use to access. There's also spaces there. But then we have spaces around the back, and then all of these are spaces too. We don't expect that the public is going to utilize those spaces. This is probably more for a larger fire that you call people in, because they can come in and go in the back door of the station. And kind of be out of the way of the apparatus. All right, we'll talk about the budget. So the good thing about having 8 hungry contractors bidding on one project like ours is that it came in close to $2 million under our cost estimate. And this is for the building costs, so the contract with the contractors billing us. So instead of 13.1 and change, our low bid was 11.145. It's a contractor that's done a fair amount with fire stations and police stations, also has worked with our architectural firm before. So we're pleased with the contractor that we've chosen. We're choosing them because they're the low bidder. There we go. We had a good set of bids. I mean, they came in anywhere from there. We had 3 that were in the 11 millions, and then a 12 million change, and then the other 3 were all in the 13 million range. So it tells us that our estimator maybe was a little conservative, but I don't think it was the estimator. I think that Dan was predicting this as it went along, and I will say it in public, it seems like he was right. And again, see why that was so hard to say? But you know, when we did the police station, we had 3 bids. And we had 1 we could take, because that's all the money we had. Because we didn't do an override for that, we did this within our budget, we used capital stabilization to pay for that, and we had a number that the finance committee had said, that's it. And they came in right there because the contractor couldn't bill us anymore because he wouldn't even the next step to get to. So we were really lucky then, and I think we're really lucky now because things seem to be slowing down. And therefore, we had, I mean, to have 8 bids all come in either under or within range of the estimate is really quite amazing. And very helpful, because that's $2 million we're not putting on the budget, and $2 million that's not increasing the costs to the homeowners. We have a pretty healthy construction contingency here. That's for a couple reasons. One, because we don't want to ever come back and ask for more money. That's one of those things I never like to do and have never done at town meeting. And also, it gives us the opportunity that if the project goes really well, we were really lucky with this project. We had only a handful of alternates. If we're able to do the same thing here, then maybe we can add some stuff back in. So the way we put this out to bid is for the base project, and then we had what we call 3 alternates. One was an epoxy coating on the floor. The second was a heating system to heat the floor of the apparatus bay, which helps to maintain our very expensive equipment. What does a new engine cost nowadays?
Over $1 million.
Right, so we want to keep the ones we have in as good shape as possible. We're putting in all the infrastructure for that, but we did as an alternate the actual system to hook it up. So if we want to do that later, we always can. And then the third thing was a heating system that runs around the top of the building that basically for really cold days helps to keep the building warm. We decided, given just overall the cost, and even though it came in so well, it's still a lot of money. And so we decided we're going to hold off on any of the alternates. If we get into the project and we're getting closer to the other side of it, and we have still plenty of contingency there, then it may be an opportunity to add 1 or more of those back in. But we want to wait and make sure that we can get done what we need to get done. Ross?
I just want to make clear, the apparatus bay is heated in the base project.
Yeah.
This was
This is
a hydronic water radiant floor that's going to help melt snow, ice, things like that, keep the trucks warmer, lower. Nice to have. It is heated in that space.
Yes, all,
John,
yeah.
what's the $1,115 for? Other expenses, for example?
So all your technology, Wi-Fi, phone systems, shelving, testing,
Technical.
chairs, geotech, desks, all the stuff that the contractor isn't putting in, and you could put this all in the contractor's bid, but then they're gonna add to it, their own markup. So we keep a lot of this stuff out ourselves so that we can go and source it. Also, one of the things that we hope to do with some of this is to pursue some grants. So there aren't a huge number of grants out there, but for things like the big, washers and dryers, and for compressors and some of that, pretty decent. I mean, the washer isn't $800 at Lowe's. So, they're, what does a washer run?
I don't know.
15,000?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Specifically made for turnout gear, so anytime you put a fire department sticker on something, it's anytime you buy any kind of specialized equipment, it costs more money.
and the compressor's like 30 or 40 grand.
Mhm.
So, we will be looking to save money in this space any place we can, in order to make sure that we get good quality equipment and good quality materials into the building, but if we can do it for less, we can do it for less. Yeah,
We're obligated to take the lowest bid, is that, we're required to do that?
you can go, Dan.
We're obligated to take the lowest responsible bid. So there's a definition of what a responsible bid is. All of the contractors were pre-qualified and references checked, as well as reviews of their file at what's called DCAM, which is the Department of Asset Capital Management and Maintenance up at the state. So everyone was pre-qualified going in. After we got the bid, we still go back and do more reference checks in case something went bad between the pre-qual and the actual issuance of the contract. And this contractor flew through with flying colors on everything. Nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
Is there restrictions on any of the systems, heating systems, because of the green communities, and is there a possibility for grants in that area?
Do you know, Dan?
Restrictions?
Of what kind of heating systems? that
The
kind of
heating
thing?
system, no, we're not, there's no restrictions from a standpoint that we're not receiving state money where there would be forcing us to do everything electric.
Right.
But most of this building's electric. So, the decision was made to do electric for the VRF system. So we're following code, I guess would be the answer to your question. We won't get any bonus for that. Kind of like the code chased the grants. In the beginning, the grants came out for you to do the right thing,
Right.
to become efficient. Now the codes are efficient. So that extra little bump you get, we'll get some small amount back from the electric company for light fixtures and certain components of the heating system, but it will be, in the tens of thousands. It won't be anything substantial.
The grants that are out there today are more for existing buildings, like the library, improving the efficiency of that equipment.
Right.
With new buildings, they expect that you meet the current code, so there's no incentive to do anything too far.
That said, we're always looking for grants. Like if we see something and we can get someone else to pay for it, we're kind of in favor of that. And, I mean, the library is a good example. That is a green community, that was an upgrade. But we basically replaced the entire air conditioning system over there, which was from when they redid the library 30 years ago, for free. It's a $140,000 grant that we got for that. So, we always look for these opportunities, and any place we can find it, we want to do that. But for a project this big, and the fact that there isn't any federal or state programs to help communities build public safety buildings, we're on the hook for the majority of it, but anywhere we can take it off, if we can get $75,000 in grants for equipment going in, that's $75,000 we're not spending on it. And if we can have money left over at the end, even if we do an alternate, that's great. We're not looking to use every penny we can. This isn't salt on the roads for, dump it all down in April, because you want to make sure you get the same amount next year. This is about, we're taxpayers too, and so if we save, even if we save $200,000, that's $200,000 we're not paying back for 30 years at 4.5%.
Did I understand correctly, it's electric heat? Is that true?
Cold weather heat pumps, yes.
Weather heat pumps.
So they are fully capable of heating the building
And cool.
in the expected design conditions, which I think here are -5 degrees. So I have no concerns with the building being able to be heated and cooled. It's just, in the wintertime at -5, you won't be able to have, luau's in there at 80 degrees.
Is the police station electric heat?
Yes,
No, police
Oh,
station
yeah.
is gas heat.
gas heat, but it's VRF, right?
No, the only heat pump in there is in the IT room.
5 years, I already forget.
Dan, it's longer than 5 years.
I know. Seems like I've been here forever.
And, when we show some of these numbers, so, architect and project management, that's a total cost for the whole project. We've paid some of this already. Like, we've paid more than half of the architect's fees already. As we get, they had to do this and they didn't do it for free for some reason. So this is to give you a full encapsulation of what we have, and the total project cost is for $14,285, of which we're looking to bond about 14. And that's because we had some money left over as we've been going along in the process, and so we already paid for some of this stuff out, not on a borrowed basis. All right, so what's next? Engineers working on necessary permitting. If you really want to hear this all over again, then you can come back next week and decide which presentation was better. But more importantly, this is about talking to your friends and neighbors, letting them know about the project if they haven't seen it, if they didn't see the notices on Facebook or any of the know that this meeting was happening. Encourage them to come next week so you don't have to. And if they can't, then please have them reach out to one of the committee members. Any of us would be happy to talk with any of the residents to answer questions and make sure people are comfortable with what's being presented. And then we have two things that have to happen before this would become an approved project. First is the annual town meeting on the 14th. And there we would approve the appropriation. And then at the elections, that's the 15th, the 17th, right?
Yes.
17th. You can see I'm living like a day at a time here. On the 17th, there would be a question along with the normal town election stuff, there'll be an extra question on the ballot to approve the debt exclusion. And just to be clear, this is a debt exclusion, which means that this would sit on the tax rolls for the 30-year period, and then it drops off. It's not a permanent raise of the levy. It is a limited time period to be able to pay this bond. And then if all that happens, they're going to start building this summer, in probably about 18 months from breaking ground to occupancy. And the good news is during a significant portion of that, we're paying interest only. So the impact on the taxes is not going to be, it's not like you're going to vote this and you're going to see it on your tax bill in September. It will take a little bit of time to catch up, and as I said, some of those other things will roll off, which will help to mitigate the cost. It's still a lot of money. You won't get me to say it any other way. And then we talked about the wells, but just to give you an idea here. Town barn, wells, septic field, fire station will be there. So this project is funded with ARPA funds. It is not part of this project, so these are the American Rescue Plan Act funds that we have at the county level. And we are letting the federal government pay for this project. We use other people's money if we can.
How much was this project?
320, I think will be.
Yeah, 300 and change. We don't have all of the estimates yet because we haven't gone out to bid yet for the design, well, for the actual
Connection.
connection and the implementation of the water treatment system.
Well, the wells are drilled.
Wells are drilled, we're waiting on
Water's been
testing
tested,
for one of the
waiting
wells.
on the analyticals.
So, but this is a project that we expect to be, to go on this summer as well, if we get approval for the fire station. So there'll be a lot of activity around here, because we're gonna bring the water up, then we gotta bring water back to the highway barn, and we gotta bring water over to the fire station, the library. Police station's all set, because the water's gonna come into this building here, and the police station's already connected. But the fire station is connected by, I don't know, pipes that are 50 years old. So we'll probably replace those. I think that's a good idea. And we have to go to the library anyways, and it's on the way. Yeah?
So when this goes to town meeting, this is going to be its own separate entity aside from what's to be expected as a 7.5% increase to the operating budget for the town anyway, correct?
Correct. This is a separate question.
So the town's going to look to increase their operating budget by 7.5%.
Are we moving that much?
Yes,
That's what it said.
7.5%, but
Okay.
it will be offset also by funds that come in from the state.
Okay, and
So-
so then to vote on this, it would be its own separate increase to taxes.
Correct.
So the push,
But-
so then the
but-
question would be.
But, so we're not doing an override for the general budget. There is
Right.
no override coming. And as a result, we are limited as to how much we can increase the general budget.
Right, probably.
And it's not 7.5%. So,
So is there,
2.5%.
is there a look to override Prop 2.5?
No, there is not.
No, not this
No.
year. Okay.
now, will we have to at some point?
Yes.
Probably, because pretty much every community is looking at that. But it is not this year. You missed all the fun at the school committee. She's like, no, I didn't. But, you know, we were able to get things sort of under control there,
Yeah.
which helped. Whether, we'll, you know, and hopefully some of the things that we're doing will help to mitigate that going forward, which will help to hold off the eventual point where we'll have to think about it or cut services. But this is an entirely separate thing. This is about building this building, and a building for the next 50 years. That's a great question. Well, I'm not going to make you stay here for, okay, Dan?
Yeah, I do want to say one thing too. I mean, since I've been here since the police station, when we did the police station, you know, we went through all of the studying back and forth, and the police station was the greater need at the time. Police stations in the Boston area, including all the way down to the South Coast, were running about $8 million to $10 million. And the lowest one we could find was Dayton, and I think it was 5.5 at the time, if my memory is correct. And we brought that in at $3 million. 3.2 million, I think was the final number on that. We're very similar here. If you look at the cost of fire stations and Google it, all throughout the Commonwealth, you might find a substation, you know, which is subsidiary to a headquarters. You might find one that's a little less than this, but you're not going to find headquarters less than the cost of this project. And I know this is a lot of money for Plympton, but this is, for a fire station, this is an incredibly good time and an incredibly good deal to do it. So, and your building committee worked tirelessly to make sure that the designer and the OPM didn't increase and do anything that wasn't essential. There's no frills in this.
This is a fire department like that police station. That's what we're building. And you know, the good part about keeping both the architect and the OPM as part of this thing, because we hired them for both, is that the design phase and sort of the needs assessment went very quickly because they knew us and they knew what we're looking for. And we delivered, what did we have, 2-3 meetings? And we were there. It's like, okay, That would be nice to have, can't have it, take that out. And one of the things that we did do is we actually, they originally had a bunch of offices in the admin area. And we said, no, let's keep it open, let's make it flexible. And that's also where the business world is now. You don't put lots of offices up. And it allowed us to utilize the space more efficiently, and also for the department to move things around as things change. And so we looked at that, and if you build less walls, it does cost a little less money. These are the things we looked at. The doors that we're putting on the station, they're not going to be those big, huge glass doors because they fail and they cost a fortune. So everything we looked at was to try and make sure that we could get the chief and the department what they need to do their job, build a full program, and to do that for many years to come, with room for growth. And I think that's what we delivered, and hopefully we can get there. But I would be hard pressed to think that we will, if we aren't able to do it this year, I would be hard pressed to think that it's going to work out this well again. Nancy?
So I may make a few comments.
Sure.
We've been talking about a building. My concern is the safety of these men back here. I have firefighters in my family, and I know what they go through. And I think we need to seriously consider their safety. Where they are stationed now is not safe at all. These are our friends, these are our neighbors, they live on our street, they live in our town. We need to protect them. As much as we need a new building, I agree, but we need to protect our firefighters. Please consider that when you vote. It's more than just a building, it's human lives that we're trying to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Well said.
This is a wood building, I assume, right? A stick-built, wood-built building?
Yes, with some steel in it, but again.
Fully suppressed.
I'm sorry?
It's going to be fully suppressed.
I don't know.
Fire
Sprinklers.
suppression.
Sprinklers.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
We're putting in an underground cistern and pumps to have a sprinkler system since we don't have public water in Plympton.
That's the 10,000 gallon tank they have on the plan?
And that's part of the cost. I mean, these are all things that we thought, like when we built the police station is a certain size for very specific reasons, because we got past another square footage, we would have put that in, and we were, what, 500,000 more to the price, 3.29, 3.7. So a lot of the things were thought about in building this building. We didn't skimp, but we didn't put up a huge steel superstructure because steel is expensive. We would have added to the cost of the building to do that. It would have looked cool inside, but we don't have the money for that. All right, Al?
I've noticed on 128, all electronic companies, they have a different way of making heat or electricity. I don't know if they're combining oxygen and separating oxygen and hydrogen and bring it back together to make electricity. What is this new kind of apparatus they have? You know?
I have no idea.
It's only on the electronic companies. They must know something we don't.
Fuel cell.
Fuel cells?
Fuel cells.
It's all very expensive upfront, but it's very efficient to run.
Yeah.
But we're not
Fuel
doing it
cell.
in this building.
Yeah, no. And we're not doing geothermal either, which would be it's a great thing too, but that's really expensive up front.
How about solar?
So our view on solar is that it is better to put the solar in one place, and our vision is to put more solar on the Dennett after we do the Dennett roofs. And a couple reasons. One, you're not putting solar on each and every building and having the incremental costs of having the solar and collecting and all the other stuff that goes on in one place, in each place. Two, it's not ideally situated for solar. Three, if you're not going to put a metal roof on it, you're going to have the potential that you're putting holes in the roof as you put your things on and put it there.
Brackets.
And we have a huge amount of space on top of the Dennett roof. Like even though we put the back wing on, And that is helping us with our budget at the den end. You wouldn't think so, but it is. I would like to see us do at some point in the future, and we've got to get the new roof on there anyways, but if we put a new roof on there, exploring the town putting its own solar on that roof, and then doing it more through a credit perspective. You make it all there, and then you use the credits and pay for the others. We've thought about it, we've talked about it with each building that we've done. So. Well, you got out before 7:30. Thank you all for coming. Any other questions, please reach out to any of us on the committee. We'd be happy to chat. Again, if you can talk to friends and neighbors, either to convince them to join us on this, or if they had questions, to come next Wednesday, or reach out to us. Thank you.